Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Heart and Soul Recovery Masterclass. So today we're going to be talking about the recovery roadmap, okay, which is going to be very important because I want to give you a bird's eye view of what this process of recovering is going to look like, okay, and I'm going to be with you through these steps. Just by way of review though, in the beginning, remember, and look guys, I'm going to sound like a broken record here. We're after the goal of eliminating the desire. Okay, that's what we want. We don't necessarily want you to stop the behavior. We want to change the desire. Okay, we want to eliminate the desire for sexual sin outside of marriage, and we want to have you love virtue. Okay, love God, right? Now, why would I say that? Well, because if you sort of two things. One is if you quit pornography, but every day you still want to, that shows me you were just using willpower and certain tools alone. It's going to eventually come back, or it will manifest itself somewhere else. So like my grandfather, again, quit. That's like him when he quit cigarettes. And then he gained about 400 pounds eating donuts, pastries. So was the root issue ever solved, or did it just manifest itself differently? Also, if you still have the desire there for pornography, does that really please the Lord? Is that what God wants for you? Is that Christ-like? Okay, I'm not talking about temptation here. I'm talking about the desire to watch porn. Eventually will probably lead you back. And this is why we see a lot of guys relapse and they go back. Oftentimes they did the work, but they still kept this idea, this belief, this core belief within them that they needed sex or they needed pornography to be happy. So just mark it down. You don't need sex to be happy. You don't need pornography to be happy. It's caused you a lot of pain. And there's a version of yourself beyond this that's happier. All right. So even I'd love for one thing you to do just to begin this heart and soul work is just take a couple of minutes, maybe five or 6 minutes, sit down with a piece of paper and a notebook. You can even pause this video if you want to now, or you can do this afterwards and just write a version of yourself in 5 years still addicted. Okay, what is that person like? Describe that person, right? It could be as simple as they're depressed. It could be as complex as they're unqualified for this form of ministry. I just want you to write down everything, and then I want you to write a version of yourself in 5 years free. Okay, compare them, look at the difference. All right, and here's one thing I would love for you to do is refer back to that list throughout your recovery. I heard of one guy one time in a recovery program. He looked at this list every morning and every night before he went to bed, and he had no relapses, which is almost unheard of. He's in like the 5% of people that didn't have any relapses. Relapses are normal. We're anticipating that they're going to happen. So again, just by way of review, we're after the desires, and I want to show you why you don't want this. Okay, so the deeper you go, the better. All right, so just do that. Okay, so let's look at this idea of deleting the reward. So remember, I wrote here, any habit or discipline can be added or removed from the brain given time, given a period of abstinence. And that's essentially what James is saying when he talks about resisting the devil and he will flee from you, right? But we see this just work out and play out naturally in waking life, right? So I had one client one time who was addicted to heroin. He told me one of the best things that could have ever happened to him is actually going to jail, right? Why is that? Because he was forced to detox from heroin for about 3 months, and he came out happier. He came out feeling a sense of freedom. And really what we're doing there is we're showing you like that porn is causing this overstimulation that is kind of keeping you entrenched in the beginning, and we'll see this in the recovery map in a second here. But I wish I could just sort of sometimes have a place where people could detox, like maybe a recovery center or like a rehab. But the problem with pornography is most people are high functioning users, right? Now there may come a time when simulations and VR technology takes off and it becomes like this addiction that's inescapable where you need rehabilitation centers. But right now you can sort of function as a upstanding citizen and be going home and masturbating for hours and or watching porn for hours, right? So look, the point here I want you to see is that abstinence is a part of this. But remember, we want to look at the type of abstinence that is going to actually eliminate the reward. Okay, it's not just stopping, it's doing heart and soul work on top of that. And so I put here for you guys Colossians 3:5, so you can just be thinking about this, where Paul says, "Put to death your members which are on the earth: fornication, uncleanness, passion, evil, desire, etc." So put to death. I just want you to think about that for a second. What does it mean to kill something, right? What does it mean for it to be dead? What does it mean for the desire for pornography to be dead in you, right? You hear this thrown around in sermons all the time. Nobody actually explores this. Something that's dead can't speak anymore. Something that's dead can't breathe anymore. It doesn't have a pulse, right? So think about that metaphorically for you. Pornography is not saying anything to you. It's not that craving, for example, is not drawing you. It's not saying, "Hey, come here," right? I'm going to self-soothe. I'm going to give you comfort and rest. It's not talking anymore because it's dead, right? That's what we're after, guys. By the power of the Holy Spirit, right, within you. Which is why I put up here this little asterisk. We're going to talk about this next time. This idea of regeneration, or you could say the new birth, is taught in the scriptures. This has to be the foundation for everything going forward. Okay, so right now we're just kind of getting the concrete out of the way, but I want to talk about, maybe even more important, what's going to be the underpinning for most of our time here, your entire journey through recovery. There needs to be this foundation of regeneration. So we'll table that for now, but just keep in mind everything that I say in this session is going to be coming out of this idea of regeneration. All right, so complete abstinence is what we're after, right? So that means we need you off of pornography for 90 days. 90 days is not a magic number. It's just we seem to measure, people report that change happens around that time. We measure seasons by 90 days, right? Winter gives way to spring. Solomon talks about there being a time for everything under the sun in Ecclesiastes. So there's this idea of breaking bad habits and building good ones typically happens in a 90-day period. I know a lot of people think it's more like 66, but we'll just keep 90 days again as a ballpark, because we're after sort of getting you out of the compulsion phase, okay, of addiction. So what is that? That's where arousal and pornography is a reflex. In other words, you get aroused and you reach for pornography and there's no thought. It's like you're functioning on autopilot mode, okay? It's this reflex, immediately you reach for it. That 90 days is going to eliminate that phase, okay? So that doesn't mean that cravings won't come. It's just now you have the power to say no to them, okay? Which is very important. So, and I want you to just, while we're here, realize that if you were exposed to pornography at a young age or you suffered abuse, we might be looking at 2 to 3 years of you getting post-acute withdrawals, pause. That's what they're called. Just these small cravings to come back to pornography, to come back to sex as a reward. And that's just because your brain didn't fully develop until you're 21 and you were introduced to a drug-like substance at an early age. Now, I don't want to scare you, okay? I don't want to discourage you. The hardest part is the 90 days. We can still get you out of the autopilot reflex phase, the compulsion phase. And that's a huge milestone, okay? So once you're out of that, you're almost out of the woods. You just got to continue the work and continue saying no. We'll get back to that in a moment. All right, so no pornography for 90 days. Well, why would I put no masturbation? Well, because a lot of men actually don't watch pornography and they still masturbate. They'll maybe masturbate to fantasies or thoughts. Sometimes they masturbate to nothing, right? They just want that feel-good stimulation. They'll just look at a white wall and they'll masturbate, for example. I don't want you to do that. Okay, I'm not trying to ruin anyone's day here. I'm not trying to be hardcore. Here's why. A couple of things. Remember, we're trying to change your sentiments and train them to view sexual reward with a partner that you're married to. Okay, so when arousal comes, it's initiate sex with my partner that I'm married to. You see that? That's the will of God for you. Not so much arousal comes and I masturbate. Masturbation, pornography, all of that has trained your sentiments to view sex as a way of self-gratification. Think about pornography. It nurtures you. It sort of mothers you, so to speak. I heard a pastor say one time that porn is like a fantasy world for men where women have female bodies and male minds, right? Think about the women in pornography. They're always down to have sex, always sexually stimulated. They're very forward, very confident. And then you meet normal women in society, and they're not like that at all, actually. Women actually want to be romanced. They want to be taken care of. They don't want to take care of you and mother you. But you see how distorted that is. It's sort of, it's like Doug Wilson said that pornography and porn, romance novels, for example, are like porn for women. That's a fantasy world where all the men have male bodies and female minds. They think like women. They speak about their feelings all the time. They care more about people than things. So we're trying to get off of that distortion. And part of that distortion is you doing sex for self or self-soothing or getting this mothering. And instead, we want to replace that with God fathering you. So Him giving you comfort, Him giving you rest, Him being stress management, Him being your escape instead of pornography. Do you see how crucial that is? Another reason why I recommend that you don't masturbate is because inevitably it's going to lead you back to pornography. Your brain can't distinguish between the two. An orgasm watching porn and an orgasm masturbating just, to nothing, even to your spouse. I don't want you, if you have pictures of your spouse, I don't want you masturbating. Not because that's inherently sinful or wrong. I'm just telling you that what we see in our experience is that leads men back to pornography. It reawakens the reward, right? That was established before. So for 90 days, no masturbation. But remember, we want this work to continue. So I just want you to be open to giving up masturbation altogether. The only exception to that is if you do masturbation in sex. So in other words, your spouse performs manual stimulation on you. I think that's fine. But again, you're with a partner and it's in the context of love in a marriage. Okay. And that, of course, I put a note here that would include edging. So we don't want you edging, right? And remember what edging is that's when you're getting close to climax, but then you back off, right? And it peaks arousal, it peaks dopamine, it peaks like sort of the reward when you actually do have an orgasm. That's fine again in sex. We just don't want you doing that. That's maybe even worse because now you're holding all of the stimulation in with no release. Okay. And then, all right, now what is this? No sex or orgasm. Maybe you saw this in the beginning and you're like, okay, what's going on here? Look, I had a mentor figure that went to a conference recently and they had a panel and they were talking about how they've seen the best results with getting off of sexual dysfunction, acting out sexually, sexting, pornography, the whole 9 yards. They've seen the best results when the client gives up sex altogether for 90 days, okay? I recognize that many of you, that's not practical, and that's not something you even want to do. All right, I want you to, again, just to be open to it, that it will be an easier process for you if you give up sex, if you're married. Now, if you're single, this is a no-brainer. You shouldn't be having sex in the first place anyway, right? You should be saving yourself, making the honeymoon special, honoring God. But okay, here's what I recommend. Let's say you're like, okay, Seth, this is way too hardcore for me. Why are you telling me this? Well, because again, that orgasm is going to reawaken the path of reward. Now, I actually want you to associate having sex with your partner as a reward. So I'm a little different. I deviate from maybe a lot of recovery programs. I think it's fine for you to have sex. What I would recommend you do is you not initiate sex. Okay, for this time, let sex happen naturally. Let your partner initiate it. Okay, if it comes up and if it happens, it happens. But try to just be not looking for it and just take a break and go out and go with God, right? Pray with God. Let God be the escape again. All right. And I also recommend, if you do have sex with your partner, that you serve them first. Try to associate sex with giving, not just taking. Okay, very, very key. One thing I'd like to mention here, just on the offset, what do we do with wet dreams for men? So with a wet dream, that's not a relapse. I don't consider that a relapse, okay? Because you couldn't control that. And but keep in mind, that will reawaken the pathway a little bit, so to speak. So you just need to be on guard for the next few days, because the cravings you're going to get are going to be very powerful, very strong. And so you just want to just have that in the back of your mind. If that happens, it's okay. It's just, and that's actually very common, honestly. While you're going through recovery, a lot of men cite that they have lots of wet dreams happen, and even mental health issues start coming up, depression, anxiety. It's completely normal. Okay. Just recognize you're going to need to be on guard. One last thing I'd say about this, what this means is, if we're doing 90 days, I want you to begin tracking somewhere what day you're on. It's not about the days, yes, but I'm just trying to show you that this is a milestone you're working up towards. So whether it's a notebook, I recommend you do a notebook, but even if you do your phone, okay, it's fine if you do your phone. Just keep a log. What day are you on? How long have you been free? How long have you been abstinent? Make sure you do this, okay, because you're going to be able to see where you are on the recovery roadmap, and you're going to be able to see when you're maybe out of the woods, so to speak. All right, so day 1, the next day you're going to put day 2, next day, day 3, just count down those days, all right? And this is why. So for our purposes, I want to just show you, again, zoom out, a bird's eye view of what you're going to experience over this time. The hardest part is this first week, okay? Just getting 7 days clean, 7 days, no PMO, no porn, no masturbation, no orgasms, is very difficult, okay? Most guys struggle here because there's just mixed feelings about quitting. Or maybe they just put themselves in positions where they're gonna relapse. So think, usually when you relapse, do some detective work here. Where are you? All right, if you can't get past this stage and you keep relapsing every week, where are you when the cravings come? Who are you around? What mood are you in? Right? So if you're at your house at 10 p.m., maybe next time you get home from work, shut your phone off and put it in a different room. Okay? Really, the first 7 days is key. It's really key to just do everything you can to avoid access, okay? I'm going to show you guys in a later module what I think is the best thing to do, the best work prior, the proactive work. But just for now, I want you to do the detective work. Okay, who, what, when, where, and why. All right. When a relapse happens, when I watch pornography, where am I? What am I doing? What time of day it is? All of that, and then be on guard. Right. Set guards, set limits there. All right. Just to give you a fighting chance for this first 7 days. This is where you almost have to be a little bit practical and more concrete. All right. These are going to be the 8 or 9, 10 out of 10 type cravings. Tell yourself no. Just suffer. I had a mentor figure tell me one time, if you need to, just cry. Right? You're withdrawing. That's it. You're going to feel anxious. Cravings usually last about 20 minutes. So you can even set a timer on your phone. Now keep in mind, 20 minutes if you're saying, no, I'm not going to do this. If you play around with the idea, a craving could last 7 hours. But if you detach from the craving, you say, nope, we're not going to go here, it's about 20 minutes of anxiety, okay? All right, so once you're past the first week, what we usually see is your commitment levels fade. So maybe you're 10 out of 10 committed in the first week. This is where we start to lose commitment. And maybe what's so hard about pornography is that the cravings don't come. We can't anticipate when they're going to come. They come out of nowhere, really. It's not something like fentanyl where you can actually tell when a craving is going to come. Usually they come within the first 24 hours. You start withdrawing. We don't know when they're going to come. We had one guy one time I was counseling that had quit alcohol, he quit drugs. He could not quit pornography because of this, because he just couldn't anticipate when the craving was going to come. So just be on guard. Your vigor tends to fade as time progresses. And so one of the things we want you to do is keep recovery at the forefront of your mind. And that could be watching these videos. That could be writing about it every day. Again, we'll get into that later. But just for now, watch out for that. Okay. Now, if you notice here, I put this thing, the 4th week spike. What is that? So a lot of times, I'm not sure where this is coming from, but we have a lot of clients cite that at the end of 1 month is where they tend to relapse. And it's usually some sort of 10 out of 10 craving that comes out of nowhere. So if you're around that time, again, just take a mental note. Just be very conscious. I've heard men and women before get to this stage and they relapse because a really heavy craving comes. All right. So then when you're in day 31 through 60, really this is where we see a lot of the withdrawal symptoms come out of nowhere and you forget what they're attached to. I remember when I was going through this, I started to experience depression. And I'm just sitting in my car like, man, I just don't want to even do anything anymore. I don't have any motivation for anything. I really don't care. And it dawned on me, oh wait, I'm withdrawing. I'm on day 40. What am I thinking? That's exactly what's happening. So you heard it from me, guys. You heard it from me right here. If you're experiencing irritability, depression, fatigue, something called flatlining is very normal. Okay. Just not having any sexual desire whatsoever, any sort of pre-ejaculation issues, sort of delayed ejaculation issues. If you have erectile dysfunction, if you're a guy, all of that is pretty normal. In fact, a lot of guys come to me because of erectile dysfunction and performance anxiety, performance issues in sex. Usually a recovery from pornography will fix that, just give it 4 to 5 months, okay? But I have to just say that a lot of these symptoms start to show up, just the vigor has not only faded, now you start getting these sort of mental health issues, a lot of irritability. A lot of guys experience what they think is ADHD, and they're like, wow, do I have adult ADHD? And then they just realize, okay, wait, no, it's just pornography. Pornography has taught me to be overstimulated and impulsive. All right, so day 71 to 90, what we see here, the reason men relapse here is they just get too confident and they stop doing the work. They stop putting in the proactive work. Or maybe they just stop thinking about what they're doing and they forget what they're doing. And that leads into this idea of phishing. So what is pornography phishing? Well, that's where you're on a non-pornographic website and you're secretly hoping to stumble upon sexualized content. So maybe that's something like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I'm not sure. Anything that's non-pornographic, that could even be reading the parent guide to films and movies, seeing what nude scenes are in them, and just fantasizing about it. All of that is you lying to yourself, and it's like you playing the slot machines at Vegas. You're hoping secretly to stumble upon something, and it almost piques the reward when you do stumble on something, because usually you do end up stumbling at some point. And just recognize that is a form of using, okay? In fact, it's not only a form of using, it's maybe the worst form of using. It's sinister in a different way. Do you see how that's sort of a way for the enemy to keep you addicted, to have you rationalize a behavior that you know is wrong if somebody found out, because you usually hide it by deleting history. This is where we see phishing start to come in a lot. But, many of you, I suspect, have even clicked on this program. Maybe hardcore pornography isn't your problem, but this porn phishing, maybe your spouse caught you, or maybe you've just seen this in yourself. I want you to consider phishing a relapse. Okay, why? We're here to eliminate the desire, not just the behavior. So just watch out for that, very key. All right, and then lastly, day 90 plus, the reason people relapse post 90 days. Okay, and you might be thinking, well, Seth, I thought you said that 90 days gives you the power to say no. I did say that. And I think you can dismiss and say no to them immediately, and you can make the conscious decision to not watch porn. A lot of men actually make the decision to watch porn. Here's why. They just didn't continue growing. So they had all of these spiritual disciplines in place. They did all of this heart and soul work. And at the end of the day, their motive, they weren't asking God to purify their motive, and they stopped doing all the work that they started. They stopped writing. They stopped walking with God. Maybe they stopped like just doing that detective work, trying to figure out what's going on here. Maybe they just stopped thinking about recovery. They just lost it at the forefront of your mind. And a lot of times this happens in crisis, okay? So a death in the family, a cancer diagnosis, an injury, that's when our old habits come knocking at the door. That's when porn comes knocking at the door, is when we're in a crisis. We had one client who had some sort of rare disease diagnosis, and he went home that day and relapsed. He was on day 81. It's one of the saddest experiences. He's so close, and that crisis just, he let that crisis speak louder than the word of God. Okay, so look, we'll stop here for now, for today, but the key is I want you to refer back to this and just recognize where you are, and remember some of the things that you experience, some of the suffering, some of the negative emotion can actually be quite normal during this phase. It's just like if you're quitting a drug, you're gonna experience some sort of relapse, some sort of withdrawal, and relapses are normal to that effect. One of the most important things I want to teach you here at the end about relapse, what you do when you relapse, please just mark it down. You're not going to go on a binge, okay? You're not going to, a lot of men, they relapse and they think, okay, I'm down here, so I might as well just watch a bunch of pornography while I have the chance, right, before I get back on the train. That's a horrible idea. And the reason that's a horrible idea, because you just undid all of the work that you did, all the healing that took place, you undo it by going on a binge, okay? That the cravings are getting smaller. Every time you get past a craving, right, almost like a woman in child labor, every time she gets past a contraction, she's one step closer, right, to the end. And it gets easier and easier with recovery, actually, the more you go. So you could, in theory, actually quit pornography just by simply not relapsing and binging, right? Because if you relapse for maybe 10 minutes looking at pornography and you don't masturbate and you say, what's wrong with me? God, I hate this, I don't want this, right? Well, you still kept some of the healing going. Next time you get a craving, it's not going to be as strong. And, so we had, for example, one guy, he went about a week and relapsed, didn't binge. The next time he went a month, and then he relapsed, but he didn't binge. Then he went 2 months. Do you see where I'm going with this? Because he never binged, he had the strength, he had the stamina, he had the momentum, he had the grace from God to actually space out the time between relapses, and eventually he quit. He got past the 90-day mark. All right. Now, of course, I don't recommend that you go that route. I want you to think, this time might be the last time I ever watch pornography. In fact, I encourage you to write down the date today and say, this day is the last time I ever watched porn, right? But I just want to show you in the beginning, don't for a second think that this is impossible. Don't think that this is something that's just sort of what you're gonna have to deal with, that you're gonna have to make peace with. That's when you get into a dangerous area. You can quit this. You will quit this with the help of God. You're gonna absolutely leave this behind you. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. Thanks.